I prayed for years. Year after year, I begged God for a child, my heart breaking with every unanswered prayer. But what if I told you that my greatest prayer wasn't just for a son, but for something much deeper? The pain of longing was only the beginning. The real test came when God answered and asked me to give him back. What does it truly mean to surrender everything you've longed for? What does it take to give up your deepest desire for a greater purpose?
Welcome to Testament Unspoken, where we bring biblical stories to life through the eyes of those who lived them. Each episode offers a raw, first-person perspective on some of the most powerful figures in Scripture, told with emotion, honesty, and depth. Please subscribe for more stories like this.
I was a woman broken by my own longing. I had prayed for a child. For years, I cried out to God, but he remained silent. I wondered if he had forgotten me. Every month I waited. Every year, I prayed harder. But the answer never came. And the longer I waited, the deeper the pain sank into my soul. I watched others around me, women who didn't pray for children, yet they had them. But me? I had nothing. It felt like God was silent, like he had turned away from me. But then, one day, he heard me, and everything changed. When I least expected it, when I had almost lost all hope, he answered. But did I truly understand the weight of my prayer? Did I know what it meant to surrender? The joy of receiving what I had prayed for was overwhelming, but it was only part of the journey. The true test was yet to come. Every year, I went to the temple, praying, asking God for a son. My heart ached with every unanswered prayer. Each prayer felt heavier than the last, and each year I thought, maybe this year God will hear me. But he didn't. I watched other women with children, holding their babies, laughing with their families, and I felt invisible. It wasn't just the emptiness of not having a child, it was the way people looked at me, the pity in their eyes, the silent judgment. How could they understand? How could anyone understand the emptiness inside me? I would go to the temple and pour out my heart before God, hoping, pleading for a child, but still, silence. The pain never stopped. I wasn't just barren, I was broken. And the worst part? I didn't know if God had forgotten me or if he just didn't want to give me what I longed for. I cried out to him, but my cries seemed to go unheard. Direct Bible verse, 1 Samuel 1:10. In bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. I couldn't bear it anymore, the pain, the waiting, the silence. So I made a vow to God. If you give me a son, I will give him back to you. He will serve you all his life. In that moment, I didn't just ask for a child. I gave my future, my heart, my hope, all back to him. It wasn't just a prayer anymore, it was a sacrifice. A promise I knew I would have to keep. The thought of giving up my son, of dedicating him to God's service, was beyond anything I had ever imagined. But I knew that if God answered my prayer, he would ask for something in return. And I was willing to give it. I had held on to the hope of motherhood for so long, but now I was willing to release it completely into God's hands. I didn't know how he would answer, but I trusted he would, and I would honor my vow. Direct Bible verse, 1 Samuel 1:11. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. God heard my prayer. He saw my pain, and he gave me Samuel. When I held him in my arms, for the first time in years, I felt complete. All the years of longing, of crying out to God, everything suddenly made sense. I could feel God's faithfulness in that moment. I looked at him, and I knew he was the answer to everything I had prayed for. I could already see how precious he was, how much he was worth. A gift from God, wrapped in my arms. But even in my joy, the weight of my promise pressed down on me. I had made a vow to God. I had promised that if he gave me a son, I would give him back to him. I knew the day would come when I would have to honor that vow, and part of me feared it. The joy of holding him, of seeing him grow, was overshadowed by the responsibility of keeping my promise. He was mine, but he wasn't mine to keep. I had to give him up, knowing he was destined for a greater purpose. But I knew that this was the path God had set for both of us. He had answered my prayer, but now it was time for me to give back what I had been given. The day I brought Samuel to the temple, I thought my heart would break. How could I give him up? How could I let go of the child I had prayed for, the child I had begged God for? He was my answer, my joy, the fulfillment of every prayer, every tear, every hope. But I knew, I had promised. I had to honor that vow. The weight of that decision felt heavier than I could carry. I kissed him goodbye, and in that moment, I knew, deep down, that I was giving him to God. But I also knew the pain of letting go. How could I surrender the one thing I had wanted more than anything else? I couldn't hold on to him forever. I had prayed for him. I had waited for him. And now I had to trust that God had a bigger plan for him than I ever could. It wasn't just about giving him up. It was about trusting God with his future. I placed him in Eli's care, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever see him again. Would I ever hold him in my arms? Would he remember me? But I had made a promise. I had promised God, and I knew this was his plan for Samuel. I couldn't keep him, but I could trust that God would care for him far better than I ever could. Direct Bible verse, 1 Samuel 1:24-25. After he was weaned, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. He was growing up under Eli's care. I couldn't always be with him, but I knew he was in good hands. Eli was a faithful man of God, and I trusted that Samuel was where he was meant to be. But the ache never left. The pain of separation never truly went away. I missed him. I missed his laugh, his smile, his little hands in mine. Every day, I wondered what he was learning, how he was growing. But the joy of knowing he was fulfilling God's plan, that he was serving God, helped ease that pain. Every time I thought of him, I knew that this was the path God had set for him, and for me. Even though it hurt, I couldn't deny that I had given him to God, and in doing so, I was part of something greater. And every year, I would go to the temple. I would see him, and I would pray for him. I could see how he was changing, how he was growing into the man God had planned for him to be. That sight gave me peace. It reminded me that God's plan was bigger than my pain. And I had to trust that whatever God had planned for Samuel, it was far beyond what I could understand. I gave Samuel back to God, but in a way, he gave me more than I could have ever imagined. When I made that vow, when I surrendered my son, I thought I was losing everything. But the truth was, God didn't take away from me. He didn't leave me empty. In giving Samuel to God, I was part of something much greater than I had ever realized. He wasn't just my son. He was God's servant. He was chosen for a purpose far beyond what I could understand, far beyond what I ever imagined for him. And as I watched him grow, I could see the purpose unfolding. I could see how God was shaping him, preparing him for a life of service. Even though it was hard to let go, I had peace. I had peace knowing that I had followed God's plan, that my sacrifice had a greater purpose than I could see in that moment. In the end, it wasn't about what I gave up, it was about what God was going to do with it. My sacrifice was part of his plan, and that was enough for me. I had trusted him, and he had shown me that there was a peace that came with surrender. A peace that could only come from knowing that my pain was part of something beautiful. I may not have had many years with Samuel, but the years we had together were filled with purpose. Every moment I spent with him, I knew it was part of God's greater plan. He was the answer to my prayer, but as he grew, he became so much more. He wasn't just the son I had longed for. He was the one who would shape the future of Israel. And through him, God was doing something bigger than I could ever have imagined. I had watched him grow, watched him step into the calling that was on his life, and I realized how much I had played a part in that. Through my surrender, through my willingness to give him back to God, I had helped set him on a path that would change Israel forever. God changed Israel through Samuel. And in that, I see my legacy. Not just as a mother who prayed, but as a woman who trusted God with everything. I may not have been the one to lead Israel, but I played a part in God's plan through the son I gave to him. And that was enough. I have walked through the pain of longing, the joy of fulfillment, and the peace of surrender. And through it all, I have learned that God's plan is always greater than our own. The journey was not easy. There were moments of heartache, of doubt, of giving up what I thought I could never live without. But in the end, I see now, his plan was so much bigger than my own desires. I trusted him with my heart, with my prayer, and with my son. And now, I rest in knowing that he has done more with Samuel than I could have ever imagined. I may not have understood everything at the time, but now I see. God's purpose was far beyond my pain, my longing, and my sacrifice, and I find peace in that. Because even in my surrender, God has worked something beautiful. And I know that through Samuel, his plan for Israel is unfolding just as he intended. If you found meaning in these stories, don't forget to share them with others and subscribe to the channel. Your support is highly appreciated. Thank you. Hit the notification button.
Hannah, mother of Samuel. Perspective, a deeply emotional story about faith, longing, and surrender. Hannah's story is not just about her prayer for a son, but about her surrender of that son back to God. Questions to explore. What was it like to give up Samuel after her deepest prayer was answered? Did she ever doubt God's plan after all her years of longing for a child? How did she feel watching her son grow up under Eli's care? How did she reconcile her pain with her gratitude?